Welcome, everyone, to the Secret Handshakes Parents Informational Roundtable. Very happy to have you all here, giving you the opportunity to ask any and all questions about the IEP process from the one, the only Dr. Jean Hess, founder of the Secret Handshake. Doctor, how are we doing today?
Oh, we're doing really well, Thomas. I'm super psyched to be here and to help people with whatever questions they have.
Absolutely. Now, we had a number of people submit questions beforehand, so we have a number that we are going to go through, but obviously, we all know Zoom. This is an interactive platform, so if at any time, based on what Jean or someone else say or ask, you'd certainly put your questions or follow-up into the chat box. Again, this is our intent to help you all navigate the somewhat confusing process and really just help you be successful in getting the support that your person needs. So, Jean, I'm going to go ahead and move the slide forward here. I will be kind of muting in and out, but I'll let you set the agenda and talk a little bit about what we're doing tonight.
Awesome. Happy to do that. So first of all, thanks for being here. I really appreciate that. I'd like to start with some introductions and talk about what brings us here. And then I would like to move through how we might be able to support one another and answer any questions that you have and talk about next steps. It's pretty straightforward. Want to maximize your time because that's what's most important, is to be able to celebrate the fact that you're here and to answer any questions that you might have so that your chaos can be a little calmer by the end of the hour. So here is a little bit about me. I am Dr. Jean. This is why I'm here. This is my special person. His name is Alex, and I would love to know who you are and who your special person is. So, Thomas, I know that you have a special person. So if you'd like to talk about that, that's great. And then we'll talk to Marie and Susie.
Absolutely. My special person is Owen. And the thing I love most about him is how intently he feels his big emotions. We're working on that, but from a practical perspective, love being here. Love working with you, Dr. Jean, because not only the way that you help parents, but also make it accessible and very practical. So thank you.
Awesome. So Marie, or that is not really Jackson. I know who that is. And Susie, Jackson is her special person, though. I know that too.
How do I know if I'm here?
You are. We can see you.
You can. Okay.
And for some of you, if you're not feeling comfortable, we understand. You can certainly put that into the chat box, but it's always nice to know a little bit more about who you're here representing, who you're here helping, because at the end of the day, the Secret Handshake is here to help teams have success for the people that they're supporting. And it's always nice to have a name with the person that you're helping.
So Marie, do you want to share who you might be and who your special person is? I have to take yourself off mute. You don't have to come on camera if you don't want to.
Yeah, my name is Marie. My special person is my son, Enrique. He's 13 years old, and he's just a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Susie came live. Susie, tell us a quick intro about your special person. Oh, hold on, dear. We got to get you to unmute. All good.
In a funny kind of way, my special person is Jean's special person. I've walked alongside her as she has proceeded on her journey for the last 20 years. So
that's the best part about Jean, is not only does she talk the talk, but she's literally walked the walk, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all for sharing. We're going to go ahead and then continue on.
Hang on. We need to know if Jackson P wants to share too, because she's not really Jackson P.
I will. We got to have you unmute there.
You just muted yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
So, yeah, I'm excited to share, but I'm feeling confused about what I'm seeing. So I see you, Jean, on the right, and then I see slide 3 of 6. Is there nothing else to see? I can't see me. I don't see anything. So
Thomas, do you want to talk her through how to change her settings?
Yeah, so and I apologize. We see your name is Jackson P. What is your other name or true name, or what would you like to be called this year?
So I am Jackson P's mom, Krista Powley, but
Krista, gotcha.
yeah, so Jackson would have set this up for me since I'm challenged with the technology. So Jack's my special person. I'm clearly his special mom, and I cannot join with probably all of the features that would make me feel more comfortable. So it's good. It feels like a phone call to me, but you can see me, Jean?
We can see you. And if you want to see the slides or see some of the other people, above where you're at with the camera, there should be some controls there that look like a grid or a tic-tac-toe board. And if you click, you'll have the different options to view.
So you are viewing, I'm viewing Thomas Holland. So
that's no fun.
Yeah. So
if you click on gallery, you'll see the rest of us, Krista.
Nope. Hold on. Whatever. I don't know. I'm here. So Jack's my special person. Jean has been my most special person. We met when Jack was going into kindergarten, so 5, 6-ish. And we have sort of been on this journey together, advocating for Jack. Most exciting about the whole thing is knowing that Jackson now is in a program downtown Chicago. He's 21 for neurodiverse young adults in a independent living program through National Louis University. And he just did his own self-advocating, thanks to Jean and our powerhouse team, for the first time as a 21-year-old. And he is loving typical college. He is loving working with the disability department within the university. So, you know, Jean started to help me, then I helped Jack, now Jack helps himself. So kind of that's the process for us and how he became really successful advocating for himself, and not only himself, but now he's learning to advocate for others. And next semester he plans on taking a class in public speaking. So pretty cool stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Marie, where are you from? You and Enrique, where are you, Marie? You want to unmute and tell us where you're located?
Yeah. We're from Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Council Bluffs, say it again.
Iowa.
Iowa.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. And we had someone else join us. That's Darren. And Darren, we're taking time to say just a little bit about who we are. Would be great to know where you are and who your special person is. So mine happens to be Alex. Marie's is Enrique, and Krista's is Jackson, and Susie and I are Sharon Alex. I would share Alex with just about anybody. Just kidding.
All right, looks like Darren is connecting to the audio there, so I don't know whether or not you heard that.
Fantastic.
All right. Okay, so Jean, would you like me to move to the next slide?
They would. We'll have Darren catch up with us. So here I am. This is me. I'm a parent of a child with autism, young adult, 25 years old. Wow, has it been a journey. I've been advocating with parents of children with special needs for 15 years. Krista was my very first client, and I was a teacher for a long time before that, and I still continue to teach every single day. So children with special needs right now virtually, and this is who I am and what I do. So I bring together the fact that I'm a parent and an advocate and a teacher, and I bring all of that right here so I can answer questions with a perspective that not many people have. And so that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to answer questions. So that's where we are.
Perfect. All right. So
questions.
This is the informational roundtable. This is where parents have a chance to ask their questions. Again, we did have some submitted to us through the Eventbrite event. We also had some submitted through Facebook. Marie, if you would like to come live, since you are one of the newer members here in Jean's community, love to give you the opportunity to ask your question first if you'd like to do so. Then we'll go around the room, see what questions are there, and then continue on with some of the ones that are submitted by the other registrants for the event. So I can go ahead and have you unmute, Marie, if you'd like to ask your question or questions. We just ask that everyone has a chance to speak today and get some of the answers they're looking for. Okay, so Marie, if you want to unmute, go here in just a second. There she is.
I got it.
Perfect. Okay, what's your question?
Well, I don't really got any questions. I'm just here to observe and see what I can learn and
Sure.
newts all this. So
Sure.
So Marie, I have questions for you. If Enrique is 13, is he in 6th grade or 7th grade?
7th.
Fantastic. And is he in a classroom with support or a special classroom?
They took him out when he went into middle school, which is confusing to me because now his grades are starting to go down. He was doing really good, and he never really was like diagnosed with anything. When he was younger, they thought he had autistic. He started school when he was 3. He didn't speak or anything. We had ladies that would come to our home and like do tests on him and stuff. And then he was never diagnosed, but he started school when he was 3. And then he's got like certain things that show autistic, like routine. He has to be on a certain routine. He shuts down emotionally when anything gets like confusing or overwhelming. Like just a lot of, I'm trying to figure out what I can do to help him because it's frustrating for both of us.
So what are the kinds of things that you think he would benefit from help?
In school, first of all, some of the teachers go, they don't know how to work with them. When he like shuts down, they shut down, and they just, I don't know, don't help him the way I feel he should need help. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. So do you know how to ask the school to do an evaluation so that they can find out whether or not he does need to have some more help?
Worried about, because now that he is out of the special classrooms, he
Mhm.
has friends. And he used to get bullied really, really bad when he was in those classrooms, not
Right.
because of the classrooms. I think because he wasn't around the other peers enough.
Mhm.
I don't know, but now he has like a lot of friends and he's participating in sports and yeah,
That's really
and then
cool.
it seems
That's
like
great
the
to hear.
teachers treat him different when he is not the right kind of different when he is in them classrooms, you know.
It's sad that there's that kind of stigma, isn't it?
I went to that school also and I was in special ed, and that's, the teachers were bullies to me there, and I ended up a runaway, and my whole life is ruined because of that school, and I don't got any option of not having my kids go to that school because we're in the district. There's just a lot, and I'm scared to even go talk to these teachers because I had problems in that school.
I'm sorry to
So
hear that, Marie.
yeah, it's a
Jean,
lot. And I don't want him to
can
get
I
bullied.
interject just
Sure.
for a second? So
Yes.
Marie, I have 3 very special children. So my
Mhm.
oldest son is a profound stutterer. My middle, who is 23 and college graduate and doing great with supportive organizations and the help of Jean, helping him advocate for himself. And then Jackson, who is autistic and doing really well in an adult supported program. But then I also have a 16-year-old daughter who has probably some other spectrum issues that need support. And what I would say is that she was in a special ed class recently for math. and she was having some conflicts with the teacher, and that was not good for her, and they were bullying her, and I felt sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. And so we pulled Nina out of it. There's 2 months left of school. We pulled her out. She's in a new math class, and she said, Mom, this is the best thing. The teacher's so great. And so she has the same supports, but with a different teacher. So sometimes I think Jean is capable of finding those hidden supports within a classroom where typical peers don't know that the children are being supported, that they can function in a typical classroom without being in a special education classroom with the right legal wording put in place for the staff to support. I think I hear that it's your son in that setting. And so I think that, you know, I have different tiered children that if he needed different support. In fact, Jack went to a school because he was bullied. I had to pull him from public school. So I feel the pain, but I definitely hope that you know that there are people like Jean and myself who have kids, and there is a solution. And when we feel the most despair, reaching out in sessions like this and finding other parents and the wording that you can use within that school bully system so that you can protect your child with like bumper guards without anybody knowing you're doing it. Yeah. So sometimes I think that is the best if they can socially fit in, but academically be buffered with the right wording through, you know, an individual education plan or a 504 plan. And definitely if their grades are failing, I think, or really maybe about struggling, then you can.
My son, he's in math, and the teacher just gives him the answers, and his main teacher, they're like, well, he has good grades this month, but he has S the next month. It's because the teacher is giving him all the answers because he don't want to deal with it, I feel. And I'm also scared to say something about it because the teachers are bullies, and I don't want to go, I don't know.
So sorry to interrupt and interject, but Dr. Jean, what I'm hearing here is that Marie wants to know not only, you know, what's the process for starting to get that evaluation, but can you do it, not anonymously, but, you know, with as little visibility as possible, if that makes sense.
There's a process that you follow, and it's confidential. I don't know how involved his current teachers would have to be in order for that to happen, but it's certainly something that can happen. And so, Marie, my advice would be that you consider, and you don't have to, all of this is absolutely voluntary, consider contacting the school and asking if they could do an evaluation and find out if your son Enrique would benefit from having at least some supports. And there are different levels of support. If he's doing really well in a regular classroom and not in a special education classroom, then there are other kinds of supports that would help him academically so that he could continue to maintain those social relationships that you said that he started and that he really likes, and continue to be in the sports that you said that he really likes. To get the supports in, say, math, which you said that may be an area that he struggles in, so that he can be successful there too. And as Krista said, it's entirely possible that he can have those supports and nobody really has to know it. And I hear too that you're saying that the teachers may be part of the problem, not part of the solution. And I don't have a really good answer for that. That's actually one of the things that Krista just had to deal with. And so sometimes if it's one set of teachers and things aren't going super well there, then you can work within the school and see if there's another teacher with the same subject that may not have the same kind of conflicts or personality clashes that.
Right, that's what I mean by that. Like, some kids and teachers just click and some just don't.
That's right.
And it's with 2 classes that the teachers seem to favor certain students, and I think that bothers him, but it's 2, language arts and math. And then math, I don't know if he's favored because the math teacher gives him all the answers, but I don't like that. And then I don't want to say anything because then he might be mad at Enrique. So for telling that he gives him all the answers, I don't know.
Dr.
So
Jean, may I
maybe
say
handle-
something? This is Darren. May I say something, Dr. Jean?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, we got a blessing. Our blessing is Christopher. And one of the things in the process that we noticed is first things first, it's important for parents to get an official diagnosis from a medical provider. And so it doesn't sound like this may have already occurred with the current speaker, but just it's highly recommended if you haven't to get
Right.
a official medical diagnosis. Then you can take that to the school and then advocate for support there. The other thing is, I don't know what state or school district you're in, but I know here we have, it is not uncommon to get a boundary exemption for your kids to go to a different school outside the boundaries. And so that's, and especially if your son or daughter has a diagnosis, then this might be even, more available. So you might want to consider that, get a boundary exemption and target a different school. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. That was good info.
Thank you, Darren.
And that's why we have the roundtables, because everybody's experience is different and everybody brings different ideas so that
Well,
we can all
Jean,
share and learn.
Jackson did what Darren was saying, have a boundary exemption. His school, he was being bullied. His needs were not being met. He was a great student, and we found a school outside of our boundary, with a lot of support from Jean, and it was the best thing that ever happened to Jack. So I agree with Darren wholeheartedly. A diagnosis and sometimes outside placement away from those teachers. Yeah.
Thanks, Marie, for sharing your question. I appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We absolutely appreciate that. We do have some additional folks who've joined. We have Jessica and Darren. I like Darren's introduction of his blessing, Christopher. Jessica's not had a chance to share her special person, but I do want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask their question tonight as part of the roundtable. Make sure everyone has a chance to get some answers to the questions that they're having. So Jessica or Darren, if you'd like to come live and ask your question, this is a chance to do so.
Jessica, I'll let you go first if you would like to.
Hi,
Hello,
Jessica.
I apologize for rolling in late here.
All good. Happy to have you.
So my question is that when you know, I don't know what you think, there's times where we've had to go into the school and ask for support within the school, and that hasn't always happened. So we've had to go for outside resources to do that. Do you have any suggestions on how to approach the school system as far as dealing with this? Because I felt like when we did this, it was more of a push off, right? To go somewhere else. So I guess my question was, do you have like a first step to how to make the school more aware without saying, we're going to push you off because we can tell you need some extra help here, I guess is my question.
So the law says that every child has a right to a free and appropriate public education. That's just the law. And so when Darren said that seeking a medical diagnosis is a step that you can take, it's certainly true. That's one way. But the other way is to contact the principal of the school and say that you would like to have your child evaluated for special services. And that starts a clock ticking, and the school has a certain amount of time to conduct an evaluation and have a series of meetings with you and determine what the needs are and where the needs have to be met. And some of that may be in a regular classroom with some extra support, and some of that may be with related services. I don't know exactly what you're seeking inside the school, but those are available to everybody. So that's what I would say. That's how
Okay.
you start. You start with a letter to the principal saying that you would like to have your child evaluated for special services.
Okay. So so I guess just to go a little further,
Yeah.
how do you how do you support your child, I guess? I think one of the things that held me back from doing that is putting like a label on them. Right.
Yeah.
So
That's a
I think
tough
that
one.
was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
And
Because there's a stigma with a label, right?
Mhm. Especially if you have to say, okay, now we asked for help, so now you have to go over here and
Well,
do this.
but maybe they don't have to go over here to do this.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean separate and unequal. If the needs can be met within the confines and the boundaries of a regular classroom with some added support, that doesn't necessarily have to say, oh, look, I'm special, but it
Mhm.
can be, oh, look, here I am. I'm the extra teacher in the classroom, and I serve all of the kids in the classroom. Your child may get these 3 questions when I walk by, while this child gets these 3 questions when I walk by. As a special educator, I support all children in a classroom, whether or not they have a label. And that's the whole trick. The whole trick is to make sure that nobody feels different just
Mhm.
because your needs may be one thing and this one may have these needs doesn't mean that it has to stigmatize them. It means that their needs are met. So it
Mm.
doesn't have to be, quote, bad. It doesn't have to look different. It doesn't have to draw attention to them. And if it is looking different and drawing attention to them, then you find a different classroom where it doesn't have that kind of stigma.
Mm. So your suggestion is to contact the principal and say, this is what it is, and we want to work with you and the
If
teacher.
you
and
have a medical diagnosis, then
medical
yes, you
diagnosis.
contact the principal and you say, I have a letter from a medical professional that says that my child has X or Y, and I'd like to talk to people in the school about figuring out how best to meet the needs of my child who has X or Y. If you don't want to involve a medical doctor, if it's not something that is medically relevant, but it's a learning issue, not a medical issue, then you contact the principal and you say, you would like to have my child evaluated for support services. And that starts a timeline, and there's an evaluation done within the school system that doesn't involve doctors and focuses more on their learning and their learning styles and whether or not they need to have either an individual education plan or a 504 plan. So an IEP, that's an individualized education plan,
Mhm.
has more supports and more accommodations and modifications in a learning environment than a 504. A 504 is the lesser intense of the two, but they both are legal documents that provide a child with a free and appropriate public education within a school environment.
Yeah, so I guess what you're really saying is it's holding the school accountable.
It's a way of holding the school accountable, but it's also a way of making sure that your child is supported in the way that your child needs to be supported.
That's
So
very
there's a
powerful.
balance there, right? You have to recognize that your child needs the support, and you have to help the school recognize that your child needs support. And then there has to be a balance. How does your child get the support they need without having the stigma and the bullying that Maria is talking about and that Krista has talked about?
Yeah. Thank
Not
you.
an easy task.
Thank
And
you.
that's where you have an advocate. That's where you have somebody who can come in and say, hey, look, I don't know I don't know what you're doing, but maybe we could talk about X or Y, or have you considered Y and Z?
Mhm. Thank you.
Absolutely. Happy to be
Thank you,
here to help.
Jessica, for your question. Appreciate that. Next up, want to go ahead to Darren. Darren, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, sir, and ask
Yes.
Dr. G your question, now's your turn.
Yeah, and I'm battling a cold, so that's why I'm not on video right now. But
All good.
so yeah, I just wanted to say it's good to be here, and we've navigated this process, especially during the formative years. You, the parent, is the advocate for the child. Anything that they need, because you know your child,
Mhm.
it leans on you to help fight for what your child needs. And so one of the things that helped us is we got in contact with a local group of other parents that had kids with special needs. And by reaching out and communicating with them, then we learned what worked, what didn't work, suggestions, recommendations, and then got the support that we needed to be successful. So those were some really big things that made a big difference for us. So my question here is, and I want to get beyond the scope of the meeting, the IEP, but as far as funding, I believe, Dr. Jean, the school has to provide so much of, to facilitate our kids. But even with that and outside of that, is there government or state funding or that typically can be available to support our kids outside of the school so they can continue learning during their formative years?
So the laws that mandate free and appropriate public education are for education alone, to the best of my knowledge. There are certainly schools and places that have grants that they seek and they have available above and beyond. I know that there are organizations, community-based organizations, that often provide specific funding for kids who have special needs or their families that have special needs. So that would be a quick browser search with our friend Google or whoever else, choose yours. And or that very same group of families that you talked about that may get together and talk about school or services may also be able to point to community-based services that are funded and available to families. But in answer to your question specifically, no, the school doesn't have to pay for anything outside of education and the services that are related to supporting education.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jean. Yep, that helps. We have navigated these waters, and fortunately, Christopher's 27 now and doing very well.
Mhm.
And so I
So
just
there are
wanted to.
different issues now because mine is 25, so I understand.
Oh,
It's a
yes.
whole nother set
Oh,
of
yeah. A
things.
whole nother set of issues.
Absolutely.
And so I don't know the age range of some of the parents here, your kids, but one of the big things before he turned 18 is we got a guardianship, and that made the world of a difference. But it's each parent have to decide for themselves and determine what's best for you and your kids. That's all I have. Thank you.
So one of the things, Darren, that I have found, and I don't know if you have found this true, but as your child ages out of school, that's what they call it, aging out, and the federal law drops off the day before their 22nd birthday. And so that same law, that provides free and appropriate public education, provides that until the day before the school day before their 22nd birthday. So my son's last day of school, not that I'm keeping track, was September 20th of 2019. And that's when his services ended. And so then there's this whole thing about, so what's next? And how do you find that? And who's
Yep.
going to help you? And how is that going to happen? So I'm sure, Darren, that you have to face those too. So
Oh, yes.
That's a
Yep, whole new,
whole nother kettle of fish.
that's the truth.
That's
Thank
the
you, Dr. Jean.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Jessica Marie. Now I want to kick it over to some of the questions we got from registrants who submitted their questions beforehand. Jean, Nancy asked, the school district isn't following the IEP. What do I do?
Boy, is that a great question. So you have some choices. You can go and talk to people and say, it says here that you should be doing these things, and I really don't understand why you're not. So what are we going to do about that? So you could start there. You could have a meeting before the meeting and try to solve these kinds of things over a cup of coffee after school with somebody who might be able to help you. And if that doesn't help, then you ask to have an IEP meeting. Sometimes parents feel that they only get to meet with the IEP team once a year at an annual review. But the fact is that if there is an issue that you feel needs to be brought to the educational team's attention, then you can request to have an IEP meeting, and that request has to be met within 10 school days. And there can be a meeting and you can have a conversation about how the school may be or may not be meeting your child's needs. And so that's an option as well. That's what I would do. If the school isn't meeting the IEP, then I would ask to have a meeting and talk about how they are or are not meeting the things that are written in the IEP that happens to be a legal and binding document. Once the meeting is finished and the document is signed by the people who are in attendance, then that becomes the piece of paper that says, this is what's going to happen for your child for the next however many months it's written into the IEP. So effective this date until this date. But it's also a living document. And so if there is a need for change within the IEP, then that happens at another IEP meeting. And so that's what I would do. If a school isn't following the IEP, I would have a meeting. I would want to know why, and I would want to know how they are going to follow the IEP or how they're going to change the IEP in order for them to be able to follow it.
So we had another question. I think it's a great one to ask because it's kind of a follow-up on the same line. Someone asked, the school district says your child's goals and objectives were met. How did they determine that?
So it depends on the IEP. It usually has a place that says, here is the goal, here are the objectives under the goal. And then there are usually 3 columns. And the 3 columns generally say things like first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and they check, or how is this goal or objective going to be monitored? Is it teacher observation? Is it teacher notes? Is it a permanent product? A permanent product means that the child has produced something, whether it's a piece of paper, not that we use paper anymore. So it may be an electronic document. It may be something, a work product. It may be a math test or a chapter test or an essay that they've written or something that they have created. And so that will be in one of the columns. That's how they monitor. And then it tells how often they'll monitor. So very often the students that I work with every day say that it will be a permanent product, which means I have to make sure that there is something documented and that I will do that once every 2 weeks as a teacher so that I can prove that they're making progress towards their goal. Does that make sense?
Yes. Does it make sense for everyone else? Let's give a thumbs up. Perfect. Another question we have here, parent asks, are there limits about what I can ask for on the IEP?
Yes.
Now,
you
what
want to
might
know
those
more?
be?
So what you ask for on an IEP has to be educationally relevant. And that becomes a gray area. I have a friend who likes to talk about black areas, white areas, and gray areas. So you can have black and white, and then there's gray. This is a gray area. So here's an example. When my son was very young, 5, 6 in kindergarten, first grade, maybe even into second grade, His IEP included adaptive living skills. So they were working on his finger strength. So he would go to occupational therapy and he would learn how to button and zip and tie his shoes and all these other things. By the time we reached the middle to the end of second grade, all that fell off. So did his pants and his shoes, because he hadn't learned in that amount of time, but it was no longer educationally relevant. Do you remember those conversations, Krista? And that's it. So as long as it's educationally relevant, and I couldn't figure out why it just didn't make sense anymore. And here's the why. It didn't make sense anymore, because that's a magic age for kids. They move from one developmental area and type of learning to another developmental area and type of learning. So they move from concrete learning, where it's all hands-on and they do lots that's black and white for them. And they move into abstract thinking, where there's a lot of gray. And so the school moves with them. Just because a typical child moves from concrete thinking to abstract thinking at the magic age of 8.5 to 9.5, somewhere in there, doesn't mean that our kids do, but that's when those skills fall off the educational relevant scale. And so that's when they stop being supported in the school. And that sort of fits some of the other things that we've been talking about. And it moves to outside of school. So my son then moved into community-based physical therapy and occupational therapy and those kinds of things.
Okay. A couple more questions here. We do want to be respectful of people's times as we get to the top of the hour. This is one that I know you talk about a lot, but we're going to ask it. Why does the school think we can talk about everything that's happened in a year in a 20-minute meeting they call the annual review? Can I ask for more time?
You can. So Krista holds the record for the marathon IEP, and that was 3 meetings, and it was about 9 hours in total. So you can ask for more time. If 20 minutes isn't enough for you, then tell them up front that 20 minutes isn't enough and schedule a longer time. If you are 2 months into, 2 weeks into the school year, it doesn't matter. You can ask to have an IEP meeting, and within 10 days, they have to put one on the calendar. That's your right as a parent. And so it's not an annual review. That's what they have to have according to the law, but that's not the only one that has to exist according to the law. The law says that you can have as many IEPs as are needed. Here's an example. My son, charmer that he is, had a whole lot of difficulty at the end of 3rd grade. And for the last 3 weeks of 3rd grade, we had an IEP meeting every single day, Monday through Friday, 3 o'clock. We had an IEP meeting. So that means, for those that don't know, there had to be an administrator, a special education administrator, a special ed teacher, a gen ed teacher, myself. There had to be a minimum of 5 people every day for 3 weeks, so that we could figure out whether or not the plan we had in place worked that day, didn't work that day, needed to be changed for the following day. He was in crisis. It was a pretty tough time. As I walked in one day, this classroom teacher was there, and she was really at her wit's end. And I understand that it was a tough time. And she said to me that my child was never going to cross the threshold of her classroom again. To which I very calmly responded, and do you have the fiscal responsibility to make that decision for the district? And she didn't. So she couldn't make that decision. So there you go. Marie, I'm so glad that you were here. We'll be here next month. I hope that you join us then. Thank you.
We will be following up. Dr. Jean is putting together some additional IEP support resources. The plan is with Secret Handshake that we're going to have a number of things out there for folks. One of the first things we did was the holiday season survival guide. That was really fun, but I know that and now, working with Jean, that the IEP really is something that is year round. And so we're very happy to help put that together. I've got one more question that we're going to ask from the list here, but we've talked about a lot tonight. And I'd like to give Jessica and Darren, if they've heard anything, and even Kristen and Susie, if they've heard anything that we've talked about so far, this maybe sprung another question. If they want to ask that now to go ahead and come live. I am going to move forward one more slide while Jessica and Darren potentially come live. Dr. Jean, if you want to ask about the opportunity to connect with you on a session, go ahead or tell us a little bit more about what they can do at askdrjean.com.
So at askdrjean.com, you can schedule a free consultation with me. And if you have a question or an issue that wasn't addressed or answered here, then we have a time to talk together. Or if you have questions in addition to what we did talk about here, then I'm certainly available to take that time with you. That would be terrific.
That's a 20-minute phone call, obligation free, nothing tied into that, just a chance for additional connection with that there. So Darren has come live. Darren, if you'd like to ask another question, go ahead, sir.
Yep. So first of all, I wanted to say thank God for women, because my wife, fortunately, she's really been the backbone and the champion for helping our blessing Christopher. And so basically one of the things, and I don't recall, Dr. Jean, I don't recall, is it because we had a medical diagnosis or what, but Christopher also had an advocate, and they would meet with us. They would, I believe, meet with the school. And so because we had the medical diagnosis and he was able to get some services through the state during the early years, that helped out as well. But I don't remember the details behind it.
Well, I certainly suggest to lots of people, not just because I am an advocate, but for lots of people everywhere, to make sure that they do have an advocate. And there are reasons for that. Again, not just because I am an advocate, but because having an advocate means that there's an extra set of eyes and ears at your meeting. And often the advocate is familiar with the law, and not every parent is, and I don't expect every parent to be. And I also know from being a parent, boy, there have been meetings I was absolutely filled with all sorts of emotion, angry, sad, overwhelmed. And if there's an advocate there, then you can sit very quietly while you're trying to get yourself all back together as a parent, and the advocate can take that emotion away and simply say, and here are the facts. And I know that that really helps a lot. And I have a particular client who shall remain nameless. She was my very first one, who would say, when she got really emotional, it was, Jean, you're going to take it because I can't talk right now. And the other thing she said that was super important was, who's going to advocate for the advocate? Because there wasn't a Jean for Dr. Jean. So Krista was Jean for Dr. Jean on occasion. So, having somebody there with you at the meeting is super important, whether they're a trained advocate, the way that I am, or somebody who's just beside you so that you're not alone. Because sometimes sitting there with 12 to 15 people on that side of the table, and you sit there all by yourself on your side of the table, is a really overwhelming feeling. And so I really think that having someone with you makes a great deal of sense, whether it's a friend or a neighbor or a relative or a quote, real advocate. Not being alone is a good thing. Jessica.
I just wanted to say, I can't tell you how many times I sat in the office and I just wanted to reach over and
Strangle.
I'm trying not to swear. I'm trying not to swear. That's what I'm trying not to do right now. Yeah. So whatever you're doing right now is super powerful. I look back, I have 2 children, and it was right at the age of 3rd grade, actually, where a lot of this had gone on. And not in a school district where any of this was even considered. It was just basically brushed under the rug. you're a pain in your pain. I guess what I could just say is what I'm hearing from this is that we just keep on fighting
Every day.
every day.
Yep. Pick up
And-
the standard every day.
And
Every
when
day.
we
Yep. Yep.
when we feel like we can't, it's good to know that there are people like Eugene that are there. I didn't think to look for anybody at that time. So I just want to say thank you
Absolutely.
for doing this. And I hope that anybody who is watching this recording or anybody who's here on this call to reach out to you. I didn't. And it's good to know there are people out there who are doing this now. So thank you.
Well, I
Thank
just want to
you.
key on one word that you said there, Jessica. It's the we have to fight every day. This is not something that needs to be done alone. But to your point, a lot of people don't necessarily know that they don't need to be alone, right? That there are people like Gene out there. It's just asking that first question of what can I do to get some help that goes from there. So I want to go ahead and end on an inspirational note, which I love working with Jean because she's very good at pointing that out. Had one question from a frustrated parent, and then we will go ahead and then have some final words once we're done with this question. But Jean, the question is this: why do the people at school always focus on my child's weaknesses when there's so many strengths?
I don't know how many times I have pointed this out. My son really is very charming. He has his flaws, and he certainly can bring those to your attention very quickly, but he also has an awful lot of strengths. And so one of the things that I advocate for is that we do focus on the positives and we look at all of the things they can do before we talk about the things they can't do. And when we're finished talking about the things they can't do, we talk about how we can turn those into things that they can. And so I just think that being able to be, again, it's another way of advocating, right? I am not afraid to say, well, let's talk about the good things that he can do. And so, and Alex hears that. And so that's something that he knows is really important in our family. And so we talk about the things that we enjoy. We live our life from a place of gratitude, and we look at the things that are important in terms of our values and our beliefs. And when he hears people talking about the things he can't do, then he self-advocates and points out the things that he can. So I think that it's important for us as parents, when they ask in that one sentence that they directed us near the beginning of the meeting that says, so what are some of your concerns? And I'll say, well, let me start with some of the celebrations. Have you noticed that Alex can bing, 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 bing? Here are the things that he can do. And here are some of my concerns. So I lead by example. When they give me the stage, I take the stage, and the stage starts with, here are some of the things that he does really well. And by the way, here are some of the things that we really need to focus on. That's how I do that.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for attending tonight's meeting. Again, if you'd like to follow up with Dr. Jean or have discussions about how she can possibly become your advocate, again, go to askdrjean.com. It's a complimentary 20-minute session where she'll learn a little bit more and see how she might be able to serve you. Stay in touch with us. If you haven't, please like Dr. Jean's Facebook page. We are going to be having these roundtables monthly. And so if you know of other parents, the third Tuesday of every month, Dr. Jean, we're going to be having these events. So if you know of other parents who this might be an appropriate fit for, invite them, bring them. We would love to have them and help start the conversation and topic of advocacy and getting them what they deserve as part of that. So Jean, great hour. I'm going to go ahead and let you close it out with some final thoughts, some final call to action, and then we'll let everyone break the call.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for being here, because I think that it's really super important that each and every one of us develops our voice, that we are able to lift our voice for our child, but do it in a way that speaks truth to the facts. And we leave the really strong emotions at the door. Doesn't mean that you can't have really strong emotions as a parent, because I certainly do, but to leave them at the door. And when you go into a meeting and you're talking to people or you're writing an email and you have something to say, that you present the facts and keep the emotion out of that as much as you can. Not always easy, but advisable, because the people on the other side of that are much more likely to hear you. I also am not afraid of saying that I understand I'm a PETA parent. And when I teach my undergraduate teachers how to be teachers, I tell them that there are different kinds of parents, and that some of the parents that they will call involved to their face, I'm told, oh, it's great, you're such an involved parent. I know behind closed doors that that's not all they say. So be your child's advocate. Darren said that. You pick it up every day, and we're the ones who make sure that our kiddos get what our kiddos need, or we try to. And when you're unable to do that on your own, then reach out to somebody who may be able to help you in a different way. And I'm here every third Tuesday. And when I'm not here on a third Tuesday, you can set up a time to talk with me, and that's at askdrjean.com. So that's what I have. I'll be back next month. Thanks again for you being here and bringing your questions and your support. It means a lot to me. So I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye now.